Welcome everyone to the European School of Theosophy, which was founded in 1981 by Geoffrey Farthing and other theosophists. Before beginning today's session, let's just take a moment for inner reflection. From the unreal, lead me to the real. From the darkness, lead me to the light. From death, lead me to immortality. Thank you. My name is Juliet Bates, and I'm part of the team of the school. The school offers lectures and online courses on a variety of topics, as well as organizing seminars and conferences. This year, the EUST is commemorating its 40th anniversary in the mysterious and mystic land of Egypt, and you are all very welcome to join us. From the 16th to the 21st of October, we will be in Luxor with the conference entitled The Veil of Isis, with optional tours which also include Cairo. Whereas the International Theosophical History Conference will be held in Alexandria from the 13th to the 14th of October, and the program for that will be announced later towards the end of June. Furthermore, look out for the London conferences being planned for June 2024 in London. You can register to receive our newsletter, to keep updated on our programs and not miss anything. The EUST is a not-for-profit organization, and the large majority of our programs are free of charge. So please support the work of the school by making a donation. The EUST has also been very active in publishing. What had started as a seed, a simple project of publishing selected writings by early theosophists from Blavatsky's Lucifer magazine, took on a life of its own and grew into the first 23 volumes of the Lucifer collection, The Blavatsky Years, 1887 to 1891, which were released last year. They are available on Amazon and will be followed by the post-Blavatsky years, which will conclude this fascinating collection, numbering around 50 volumes. It was indeed a fascinating and inspirational journey to bring back to light the writings of those early authors and making them accessible for readers today. Dr. Franz Hartmann was one of those early theosophists, and another seed was being planted across the ocean by Dos McDavid. He wanted to have several of Hartmann's books in German translated into English and published to make them available to everyone. On approaching the EUST, he found very fertile ground and enthusiasm to the point that his initial idea to publish 5 books grew to 10 volumes, becoming the Hartmann collection. As with the Lucifer collection, it did not end there. The seeds Dos planted were nurtured and grew further to produce the Hartmann lectures, which will focus on individual volumes presented by some of the people who have dedicated their energy, passion, and time to bringing these volumes into the spotlight. The first series of lectures to be held in June and July begins today with volume number 6, entitled Mysteries, Symbols, and Occult Forces, which has been published for the first time in English, translated from German by Suzanne Hoffel-Wellenhofer, edited by the EUST, and presented today by Erika Georgiadis. It is now my honor to introduce today's speaker. Erika Georgiadis is the director of the European School of Theosophy and the School of Wisdom of the Theosophical Society Adia. She is also the vice president of the Theosophical Society in Greece and a member of the Theosophical Society Adia since 1991. Erica is also a Master of Research candidate at the University of Wales Trinity St David. She holds a postgraduate degree with merit from the same institution and a BA Honours in Philosophy and Psychological Studies. She is a deep ecologist and animal rights advocate and lives in Greece with her husband, daughter, and many dogs. So welcome once again to everyone, and let me pass the word to Erica and mysteries, symbols, and occult forces.
Click on your name. Okay, thank you. So thank you, Juliet, for the introduction, and greetings to all of you joining us today. During this presentation, I will not explore Hartman's life, as this will be covered in the lecture that will be delivered on the 16th of July by Robert. Today, I will briefly talk about Hartman and the Franz Hartman collection. I will explain the frontispiece designed by Hartman, which is basically the cover we have designed for the Franz Hartman collection. And I will discuss the book Mysteries, Symbols, and Occult Powers or Forces. I must, however, say that before beginning that when Dos approached us about this work, it felt like Hartman himself was knocking at our door. The reason, of course, metaphorically speaking, the reason why is that when we compile the 23 volumes of the Lucifer collection, Hartman was very much present. He was actively participating in sending correspondence, reviewing books and magazines, writing books, writing articles to Lucifer magazine. He was a theosophist who remained a steady supporter and close associate of Blavatsky until the end of her life. It is truly an honor for all of us to have had the opportunity to know more about his life and work by editing and working on the Franz Hartman collection. The collection is comprised of 10 volumes, but it is open-ended, and we will publish more. We also plan to make a website dedicated to Hartman and his work. And also we will attempt to compile a full bibliography of his works. Of course, we need volunteers and help to carry on this project. So if you are interested in joining us and have time to dedicate it, please send us a note. Franz Hartman was a prominent, let me change the slide. Here you can see one of his pictures. Franz Hartman was a prominent figure in his time. He was a German physician, Rosicrucian, a Mason, a Christian mystic, a theosophist, a close associate of Elena Petrovna Blavatsky. Following the Judd's case, and the split that occurred in the Theosophical Society when Judd left, Hartman founded the German Theosophical Society in 1896. It seems that after that, he also founded 2 other Theosophical Societies in Germany. However, Robert, he will be in a better position to discuss and explain all the work that Hartman has done in relation to the Theosophical Societies in Germany. He, together with Theodor Reuss and Karl Kellner, was also one of the main founders of the Ordo Templi Orientis, Otto, at the time a Masonic organization of the sorts. Hartmann is also considered one of the most important theosophical writers of the 19th century. Well, here you can see a plaque that is at the door of his house where he passed away, where we find the following inscription. In this house, on August 7, 1912, the great German mystic and theosophist, Dr. Franz Hartmann, the founder of the Innernaut Theosophical Society, lived and died. Here you can see Hartmann. If you can see the pointer, he is the second person seated from the right to left with a mustache during the Second International Convention of the Theosophical Society, ADR, in India. Hartmann, he was closely related and very active in the work of the Theosophical Society. He also devoted himself to Christianity, to Christian mysticism. And one may wonder how this came about, why he gave such an emphasis on Christian mysticism in his work. So I found this quote that we are going to read together now in the book from Among the Adepts and the Rosicrucians, Highly Enlightening. Open quote. He says, believe that is not at all rare for someone to see in their dreams a person they do not know, whom they then will meet later in life. And I know from experience that there are symbolic dreams that can show us the future. On New Year's Eve, in 883 in Adyar, half asleep, I had a vision in which I saw a boa curled up next to my bed, with its erect neck bearing a human head. This head had such a strong individuality that the facial features were firmly imprinted in my memory. It was a head with a high forehead and strangely shining eyes that looked at me with clear, penetrating gazes. This appearance testified to intelligence, and the serpentine body as a symbol of wisdom seemed to me to indicate that reason and wisdom were united in this creature. I had the impression that I would meet this being later in life, and that it would play an important role in my life. And he continues, in the spring of 1885, and I open parentheses here, when I travel, he says, with HP to Naples, from Adyar to Naples, well, when Madame Blavatsky needed to leave Adyar because of the problems that she had with the Hodgson report to come, and with the Colomb couple and so much criticism, she had to leave Adyar, and she barely could walk. She was very ill. She was taken on a wheelchair to the ship, and together with her, accompanying her was Dr. Hartmann. And they traveled together to Naples, where he stayed with her until she left Naples and went to Wolfsburg, where she started writing the Secret Doctrine. So here he's saying that when I traveled with H.P. Blavatsky to Naples, and soon after made the acquaintance of a small family of Christian mystics who had formed a group among themselves for the advancement of the inner life, two persons were the leaders and teachers of the group. And I was sure I recognized in one of these two leaders the subject of the vision. But the head appeared to me less idealized than in my vision. This and the fact that before I left India, notice he says, the fact that before I left India, I had been advised by higher authority to study Christian mysticism, prompted me to look more closely. Soon I was introduced to this small circle and was allowed to attend the group meetings. At these meetings, there was the greatest harmony, and the teacher spoke words of wisdom. It was not only theoretical teaching, entertainment, or pastime, but it was intended to be a practical school of yoga. And indeed, Hartman referred to a number of Christian practices as Christian yoga. And Suzanne will be giving a lecture because this is the title, Yoga and the Christianity is also one of the books that she has translated from German to English. So we see that the reason why, the probable reason why Hartman turns to Christian mysticism is to higher advice during his stay in Adyar. Now, to know a bit more, just to give you an idea about his personality, as we are not going to talk about his life. This quote that I'm going to read to you now, it's from the Lucifer magazine that will be included in a volume entitled The Judge's Case. So this was written by Hartman, I think, in 1893 or 4, I don't remember. 1895, the date says that. And there was, of course, the Judge's Case brought many problems in the Theosophical Society and the splits with the Theosophical, the first great split that occurred. The Judge left at ES with all the American members and created a new Theosophical Society in the United States, and the Besant remained with Occult linked to Adyar. And then here, Hartman says, open quotes, "We ought to cling for the attainment of self-knowledge, neither to the turban of a Mahatma, nor to the coat tail of Mr. Judge, nor to H.P. Blavatsky's or Mrs. Besant's aprons strings, but stand upon our own legs and grow spiritually strong enough so as not to require any crutch whatsoever." I will close the quote here. He's discussing a pamphlet written by Garrett. So you see here that Dr. Hartman was a very independent man. And he always emphasized that we must try to awake spiritually through the process of self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is a central notion in Dr. Hartman's philosophy and mysticism, if we could say, which is a topic that we will focus today. Now, I have a wrong slide here. Now, what you see here is the frontispiece and cover of the Lucifer collection. That's a beautiful design that it was used by Dr. Hartman in his book, Magic, Black and White. And in discussing with the group of the European School of Theosophy, what would be the best design for the cover of the Hartman collection, we all decided that this would be a wonderful design. And this so is used for the cover of all books. We have included in each volume of the Hartman collection an explanation written by Hartman himself on the symbolism of this image, which I will briefly mention, because only this image would need like 1 or 2 lectures. So underneath you can see the sleeping Sphinx, which symbolizes the word of illusion, the word of form. The higher states of consciousness are represented by the human aspect of the Sphinx. I do not use the term principles or bodies or sevenfold constitution to refer to the sevenfold constitution of the theosophical system, but states of consciousness, because these different levels, this sevenfold constitution is in essence different levels of consciousness, as Blavatsky herself explains in The Secret Doctrine. And I find that's much more didactic and much more easier to refer to them as consciousness than planes or bodies. Now, the lower states of consciousness are represented by the non-human aspect of the Sphinx. The Sphinx sleeps, and the image you see above it is her unfolding dream, representing the interaction between microcosm and macrocosm taking place within the all-pervading cycle of life. A circle, the circle that you see, which is without beginning and without ends, and from where the Supreme Source is manifest into existence, projected, according to Hartman, by the power of the Supreme Will. The circle within, and you can see around here, you can see the 12 signs of the zodiac, representing the planets belonging to our solar system, symbolizing the cosmos. And of course, reminding you that Madame Blavatsky, again, in The Secret Doctrine, refers that the teachings, the secret Doctrine, focuses only on our solar system. The activity in the cosmos that you see here, because there are many things happening here, is, for example, represented by the interlaced triangles, a symbol that we also have in the emblem of the Theosophical Society. The 2 outer ones represent the great powers of creation, preservation, and destruction, the great Hindu triad, Brahma, Vishnu, and Krishna, acting upon the elements fire, water, earth, and air for the manifestation of the material world. The 2 inner interlaced triangles refer more specifically to the awakening of the human being, to the awakening of the spiritual consciousness. And the letters B and C and D that you see there symbolize knowledge, the knower, and the known. A trinity making up what we know, or what Hartman calls or defines as consciousness. Consciousness is at the same time the knower and the known, the observer and the observed is one. And the letters E, F, and G represent the physical body. We have no time to discuss it here now, but it's interesting to point out that the center represents divine Atma, the personal Christ. Hartman used a very heavy Christian language. He will refer in all his writings to God, to Christ, to Godhead, and so on. And we are very aware, for example, that Madame Blavatsky, she did not like using the term God, for example. But one should be not prejudiced about it, because when Hartman talks about God, he talks about the same thing Blavatsky was talking about in the Secret Doctrine, which is this unknown divine source. So he says that the center that you see represents the divine Atma, the personal Christ, and the Trinity receives the light from Paramatma. And the light of Paramatma is the light of the rose and of the cross, formed by the wisdom and will. So we see again that the wisdom and will is something very important in Hartman's worldview. Now, we will focus, after this brief overview, we will focus on the book Mystery, Symbols, and Occult Forces. We thought to open the Hartman Talks with volume 6 of the Franz Hartman collection, as it gives a comprehensive overview of his approach to philosophy. As Juliet has mentioned, this work was translated by Suzanne, she's here with us today, and edited by us. The book contains the following: a preface written by the editors, a description of a frontispiece, which is in essence the cover that you see here, Hartman, a brief introduction about a Hartman life by Robert. He will be lecturing on the 16th. Each volume of the Hartman collection contains these three elements. This one contains an introduction by myself, a foreword by Hartman, and then it's divided in a number of chapters for focusing on the inner life, self-knowledge, the path, symbols, God and nature, the I or ego, the word, the ABC of the inner life, mantras, theosophy, and so on. Okay, now, Mysteries, Symbols, and Occult Forces is a book of around 288 pages that emphasizes the importance of changing our way of life, from focusing on fleeting sensory experiences, the accumulation of wealthy and intellectual knowledge, to transcending the limitations of the intellect, to exploring the nature of the self, to developing the strength of character, self-discipline, and looking within to allow what Hartman calls genuine self-consciousness to emerge. For Hartman, genuine self-consciousness is achieved when all subjective and objective impressions relating to the external material world are suspended. To achieve this state, described by him as a state of consciousness, of an all-encompassing oneness, it is necessary to achieve self-knowledge, at which point the subject and object become one, at which point there is no observer and the observed, but a state of oneness. There is no separation between I and you, between object and subject. To understand how Hartman sees self-knowledge, it's important to make a distinction between the lay and the spiritual types of self-knowledge. The lay type of self-knowledge is the type of self-knowledge in which one does not need to engage into ascetic practices, but involves practices on focusing and trying to know our psychological self, such as being aware of our thoughts, feelings, desires, strengths, weaknesses, beliefs, values, intentions, motivations, and more. Of course, this type of self-knowledge is a crucial component for personal growth, for the development, self-development that can lead to better decision-making, emotional balance, improvement in interpersonal relationships, and more. This kind of self-knowledge is based on the knowledge of the psychological self. This self of ours with a specific name, a personal identity associated with a social, cultural background, a language, and so on. Examples of psychological self-knowledge, I even gave a lecture some time ago just on this topic, is, for example, trying to know what are the virtues you have learned from your father, mother, family member, or all of them, what virtues you have learned from friends, what are the virtues that you have learned from your enemies, between quotation mark. You know, we are not isolated creatures living in this world. Our interaction with everything around us is crucial, and it is what makes us what we are today. Psychological practices of self-knowledge involve self-reflection, taking time to reflect on our thoughts, feelings, and actions, questioning our desires, focusing on our personal strengths to gain a better understanding of our own abilities and to be able to use them better, reflecting on our past mistakes so that we don't repeat them again, seeking feedback from others, and valuable insights that can help us to improve ourselves and behavior, practicing self-control, and so on and so forth. These mentioned practices of self-knowledge can be considered and are lay because they do not involve asceticism. However, the type of self-knowledge Hartman talks about is the knowledge derived from the union with Atman, and that requires asceticism, involving exercises and practices such as concentration, dharana, which is very much emphasized in the voice of the silence, a disciplined effort to overcome distractions and develop a single-pointed awareness, illumination. As the mind enters a state of dharana, it begins to receive insights and revelations about the nature of the true self, and that is when this type of spiritual self-knowledge Hartman talks about, and the voice of the silence talks about, and basically the core theosophical literature points out, it starts happening, it starts occurring. These insights are not gained through reasoning or discursive thinking, but through non-conceptual experiences. The culmination of this process of self-knowledge, of this journey, is the union with our higher self, leading to a state of a profound peace, bliss, and love, which could call even us to the state of enlightenment known as nirvana. So the type of self-knowledge Hartman is talking on his book is Atma Jnana, or the knowledge of the divine self, Atma. For Hartman, genuine self-consciousness, sometimes also referred to in the present translation as self-awareness, is defined as God consciousness, Atma. It is a state of consciousness one can achieve by developing an unwavering character, possible only by way of asceticism. Worldly distractions such as alcohol, sensual infatuation, excessive passions, psychism, to name a few, hinder the development of a strong moral conduct, according to Hartman, obstructing the emergence of this genuine self-consciousness and achieving a state of self-knowledge. In this way, the extent to which one lives a simple and disciplined life, not driven by vanities, determines the moral strength of character, and such moral strength is dependent, according to Hartman, on the will. Therefore, the notion of will, again, plays a central role in Hartman's view, for without it, there is no self-discipline, no possibility to develop strength of character, without which genuine self-consciousness cannot be experienced. Hartman considers that the will of a person should become the divine will. In this way, the personality of the flesh should be crucified so that genuine consciousness may emerge. As in Galatians 2.20, the book number 9 of the New Testament, in a letter of Paul to the apostle, to a Christian group in Galatia. That's why it's called Galatians. It says, open quote, "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me," close quote. So when the crucifixion or sacrifice of the personal self occurs, one achieves a state of self-knowledge and the genuine self-consciousness emerges. Such a state of consciousness can be achieved only, of course, by first-hand experiences, by the practice of asceticism, and not by theoretical knowledge. According to Hartman, preconceived ideas, inferences, hypotheses, theories, doctrines, teachings play no role in the awakening of genuine self-consciousness, which occurs and is triggered through first-hand experience and not intellectualism, through love and not conjectures, through the knowledge of the one divine self. According to Hartman, understanding that is only through experience one achieves through self-knowledge does not invalidate what he calls as the teachings and doctrines of spiritual traditions. Because the purpose of any teaching, according to him, any teaching considered spiritual, is not blind acceptance, it's not doubt, it's not criticism deprived of true understanding, but to live them, to make them a reality in our daily lives. Hartman supports the notion that such teachings are like seeds that to flourish, they depend on the soil they land. In this way, he draws an analogy between genuine self-consciousness and a gardener, because the soul needs to be nurtured as a garden, as a seed. The gardener also sees the inner potential of every tiny seed, every humble bud, and that for Hartman is true self-consciousness. In this manner, he equates self-consciousness from a Christian perspective to a type of love that endures everything, that despite the rough bark or the thorns and the dull leaves, recognizes the potential that lies within all living beings, and with tender care nurtures the garden, bringing forth the light that shines like the sun. In this way, Hartman believes that love is the key to unlocking genuine self-consciousness, and that consciousness rests within our hearts. It is a state of being that sees the intrinsic beauty of a thing, regardless of how rough it may be. For Hartman, we live in a soulless and soul-destroying time, where people chase ephemeral dreams and are driven by impulses and desires, instead of pursuing the knowledge of that which is eternal, without exploring the inner self, without dedicating every moment of this transitory life to awake genuine self-consciousness. He dedicates the final chapter of his book to theosophy and says the following, open quote: "Everything said so far will have defeated its purpose if it does not contribute to somewhat clarifying and counteracting the nonsense that abounds with what's called theosophy, occultism, psychic research. It should give insight to those searching for the truth and help them understand that true wisdom has nothing to do with phantoms, personality cults, or submission to authorities. Instead, it concerns the inner spiritual knowledge of the divine self residing within the heart of all creatures." For Hartman, then, true theosophy means that one becomes a manifestation and a personification of the divine love, wisdom, and will. Thank you very much.